Hello, good morning. Welcome to our lesson. Thank you for making it today. Today we will be going through interviewing and advising, and as you know, this is a module that is being assessed in the LPC, and this is also one of the most important skills any lawyer needs to have. And with experience, this will become second nature to you, and this will be easier than it seems because it will come naturally to you through experience and through learning. And I hope I can help you in that stance as well. So I'm going to go through the lesson outcomes for today. So essentially today we will be going through the introduction to interviewing and advising. We will go through the assessment criteria, which is the interviewing model. We will be going through an interview record template, and I will be showing you examples of a good interview and a bad interview because we can always learn from mistakes and we can always take good examples from a good piece of work. So we will be doing that. I would also just like to add, there are some materials that I'm using here, which is the assessment criteria, the interviewing model, and the interviewing record template. So I have actually emailed this to you. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes for you to just get that up onto your screen so we both are on the same page. And in addition, if I do use any sort of extra annotations from my textbook, or if I end up using any other materials during this lesson, rest assured I will email that to you as well once we're done with the lesson. So do you have any questions to begin with, or would you like to add anything at all? Okay, great. So that leads us on to the 5 main objectives of an interview. So when a client comes to you with a concern or with a concern of a litigation matter, we as lawyers, we should be focused on achieving these 5 main objectives. So that the first and the most important one is to establish rapport between the client and the solicitor. So as you're aware, the client is coming to you. They're already stressed. They're very distressed about this situation that's happened. Otherwise, they wouldn't come to a lawyer's office. So in that scenario, we do have to make sure that the client is welcomed, that the client is comfortable, and that there's an environment, an inviting environment, which allows them to speak freely. So that means you as a lawyer, you need to be inviting. So some of the things that you will start off by saying is you can say good morning, Mrs. or Mr. and surname. So this is called the greeting. So when you see your client for the first time, you should address them by their surname and you should call them Mr. or Mrs. surname. That is just, you still have to be formal, but you still have to be inviting. So once you say that, you will introduce yourself. You will say, my name is so and so, and I am a trainee solicitor at the company name. So an example of this would be, my name is Nimisha. I am a trainee solicitor at PwC. Just like that. So that's an example for you. So you have to be able to make the client comfortable and make sure that the environment is comfortable and that you build a rapport with a client. Otherwise, you're just going to have a very awkward interview and it's just not time efficient for the client or for you as a solicitor. So the first and most important is to establish rapport between the solicitor and client. And obviously there are a few tips and tricks which I will get into, but I just wanted to give an example. The second objective is to obtain relevant information. This is so important because this will guide our case, and as we gather more information, we will get more clarity on what the case is. So in the beginning, we do have to give clients the time for them to say their piece. So when you give the client the time to say their piece, you do not interrupt them, you just let them talk, let them say whatever they need to say, and then we start asking questions that are relevant to what the client said in order to get more clarity on this case. So that very much leads me to the third objective, which is to help the client to reach appropriate decisions, which means guiding the clients with different options available. So this is when you start to use your legal knowledge and you start to advise them. So if someone comes to you with a shareholding issue and they want to have majority shareholding, then you will outline the company law that is involved with shareholdings, and then you would make sure that they understand what you're talking about, and then you will give them options. So you will be like, you have option A, option B, option C, and then this very nicely goes into the fourth objective, which is to plan future actions. So these are the steps that is very important. And I've put objective number 5 as client care and cost information issues. Obviously, cost is a very important part of an interview as well. The client needs to know outright how much they will be paying for the interview. And this is something I'm going to give you, like actual guidelines on what to say, how to format different types of sections within the interview in order for the client to understand and to make sure that everything's in chronological order and that nothing is modeled up. So we're going to go through that in a minute, but I'm just going to give you a minute for you to screenshot these notes if you are collating notes. So this is a good time for you to screenshot, and then we will be going through the principal skills that are involved with interviewing your client. So I'll just give you a second for you to screenshot the previous screen, which is here. So if that's done, I'll just give you a second actually. Okay, so now we will be moving on to the principal skills that are involved. This may seem very basic, but we do have to go through the basics first before we jump to the main thing. We need to know what, it's a basic thing as a lawyer that you need to know in order to get like all the juicy bits from our client. So this is very relevant. So again, very basic. You have to listen to your client's story. You have to engage with them. You have to make them comfortable in order for them to be happy enough to share their story. Obviously, they're very distressed, number one, and they're upset, I assume. So you have to make them feel very comfortable and listen to their story without, jumping in or without interrupting them when they're saying their bit. So number 2 is asking relevant questions, and this is what I also touched upon previously, that we need to know what is relevant, what is not relevant, because the clients will end up talking a lot. So we need to be able to pick on what is the most relevant objective or a relevant thing that the client is saying. Number 3, analyzing facts and apply the appropriate law. Very important again, and this is where our legal skills come in. We then have to explain the law in layman's terms. So if I tell someone who has no background in law and I just say, oh, section 132 of company law means that this, they will be confused, they will be taken aback, and they would just think, oh, if that was a reason, then I can just check on Google. So we have to break down the law and we have to explain it in layman's terms. So a person that hasn't studied law will completely understand what you're saying and ensure that the client and you as a lawyer are on the same page. So explaining the law in a very understandable term is very important. We've got a 4th point, which is note-taking. Again, very basic, but you should be able to take the relevant notes. And this is something we will practice in today's lesson, and taking relevant, important notes. And also the appropriate structure of the interview, which is something that I'm going to go into now. The structure of the interview is very important, and you need to make sure that it is in chronological order, and to ensure that you're not muddled up. You're not saying, oh, tell me what you want from this interview and then jump to the costs. It just does not make sense like that. We have to go through the order. And in a exam condition, when you are getting examined and assessed on this module, you have to follow the framework I'm going to show you. And if you do muddle up the framework, you will be negatively marked, and this is something that we don't want to happen. So for that reason, as you can see here, I've given you the interviewing and advising structure. You do need to use this, and we're going to go through this shortly. But before that, like I said, I emailed you this piece of document as well. I'm going to give you a second for you to take that up, so we both know what we're looking at, and then we can also fill in some notes, which also I'll give you the opportunity to do that. So yeah, I'll just give you a second to get that from your email.